Good evening from Edmonton International Airport. My name is Alex, and welcome back to the channel. In today's trip report, which was filmed back in November 2019, I'm flying with Central Mountain Air on a short regional flight down to Calgary, on board their Dornier 328. Central Mountain Air, or CMA for short, is a Western Canadian airline that flies mostly within British Columbia, but they also have a few routes here in Alberta. In Edmonton, Central Mountain Air's check-in area is in the older part of the terminal, and only opens 2 hours before our departing flight. Today's flight ended up being delayed by about half an hour, due to some bad weather in northern Alberta, so I had some extra time to take a look around. At CMA's desk, they have some free bag tags, their in-flight magazine, and a handy printed flight schedule from Edmonton. I flew here earlier that day from Calgary on the now-retired Air Canada Express -8100. After spending a couple hours here with my friend Robin from Viewlogs, it was back to Calgary on the evening flight. Flights between Edmonton and Calgary rarely take longer than 30 minutes. The two airports are only 250 kilometers apart, or 2.5 hours by car, so it is more practical to drive most of the time. However, this is an aviation channel, so obviously I'm going to go with the more exciting option. Now, if you recall from last year, I've already flown with Central Mountain Air, doing the opposite of this flight today. I made another trip report on that with a much worse microphone, but people really seem to like it. The Dornier is a relatively unique aircraft type here in Canada, and CMA is actually the only scheduled operator of the type in the entire country. I had a great time with Central Mountain Air on that trip though, and the timing of this flight worked out nicely, so booking with them again was a no-brainer. Our aircraft for today is another one of Central Mountain Air's Dornier 328s, a 21-year-old example registered as Charlie Foxtrot Delta Yankee November, painted in this striking Arctic camouflage livery. This aircraft was delivered to Russian carrier Premier in 1998, and then picked up by German operator Bonair Business Charter in 2003. It made its way to Canada in 2005 and has flown with Central Mountain Air ever since. One perk of flying with Central Mountain Air, for the aviation enthusiasts at least, are the ground boarding gates they use. Gate 7 here in Edmonton was built exactly for that purpose. Seeing as today's aircraft is another Dornier, I wasn't expecting this flight to be much different. I chose a different seat this time for a view of the engines, but I assumed this would be a fairly normal trip back home. Well, as it turns out, that video from last year would be a big part of today's flight. Right as I got to the door, I was greeted by our very friendly cabin crew member, which just happened to be working my other Dornier flight, and they actually remembered me. Keep in mind that the previous flight was over 6 months ago at the time of filming this. Granted, tall guy with multiple cameras is slightly more memorable than your average passenger, but you know what? It felt kinda nice. That's not something that's ever happened to me before on a larger airline, and it really made me feel welcome. CMA offers free seat selection at check-in, so if you check in early enough, you can get an extra legroom seat for no additional cost. For this flight, I picked seat 1F, the bulkhead exit row at the very front of the aircraft. There's a bit less stretching room than the other exit row in the back, but there's plenty of knee space and an excellent engine view. Fortunately, this flight was much more full than my other one, but I still lucked out with nobody beside me. The reflections in the window were not exactly forgiving on the taxi out, so I'll go over the rest once we're in the air. For now, here's our departure from Edmonton, taking off from runway 02. There wasn't much of a view out the window on this cloudy evening, so I ended up chatting with our crew member for most of the ascent. It turns out they had seen the video from the other flight, after it made its way to them through a few people at the airline. Apparently, they all really enjoyed it. Now that's something I had not expected to come from that, and given all the aviation content out there these days, it feels like quite an honor, to me at least. The Dornier 328 seats 30 passengers in a 1-2 configuration. In the bulkhead seats, the seatbelts interestingly come with a shoulder strap. That's not something I've seen on a regional airliner before. As you'd expect, the tray table can also be found in the armrest and folds out. Like I said earlier, flights between Calgary and Edmonton are quite short, which makes Central Mountaineer's generous snack offerings stand out. On this flight, I had a can of Pepsi, some pretzels, and some Oreos. In the seat back pocket, you'll find a safety card, an air sickness bag, and Central Mountaineer's in-flight magazine. Between Edmonton and Calgary, you really don't spend very long at cruising altitude, so we began our descent not long afterwards. However, you might have noticed in an earlier shot, but the Dornier has this little window in the middle of the flight deck door. Why, I'm not sure, but with permission from our crew member, filming the view through there is basically like sitting in the jump seat. Here's our arrival into Calgary from probably the coolest angle I've ever gotten on a flight here, landing on runway 17 right. Once again, this was a wonderful flight with Central Mountaineer. From the check-in desk to the gate, CMA staff were all extremely friendly, not to mention the absolutely fantastic crew on board. They really made the flight exceptional. I really like flying on the Dornier 328. It's a smooth, comfortable ride, and the fact that it's so rare in Canada is a nice bonus. I'm also super glad I was able to take advantage of that front-facing view. It's an interesting quirk of the Dornier, and it wouldn't have happened had I not been sitting where I was. Just to be clear though, this was not a sponsored video. I did pay for my own airfare. I just really enjoyed my first time flying with CMA, and I enjoyed the second time even more. I think what stood out the most though was that personal touch, and it was a really nice reminder of why I make these videos in the first place, to share my flights and travels with like-minded people. It's something I don't say often enough, but I'm honestly humbled by all of you who continue to watch these videos, especially those of you who work in the industry that I'm so passionate about. Hearing that my videos get shared around by crews and within airlines really means a lot, and being told in person that one last year had such a positive impact on a lot of people is really special. So, genuinely, thank you for watching. Leave a like if you enjoyed, subscribe if you're new, and I will see you next week.